Try to imagine something that doesn't exist, something you've never seen. Now concentrate on how it makes you feel and let your hand drift across the canvas. Oh my God.
What have you done?
Using watercolors can be one of the most daunting art media the budding artist can aspire to use. Most of us grew with the use of solid art materials such as pencils, crayons, coloring pens, and markers, and having to use a brush to create the fine details of an artwork will surely scare and drive the creativity out of someone. There's just a huge difference in control or dexterity needed between watercolors and the previously mentioned art materials. You've mastered filling out tight spaces with your oil pastel or color pencil? Well, try using a brush to do the same task and be horrified to discover that you are no different from a 2-year-old making a mess of their mother's kitchen tiles.
What did you do? You did such a good job.
Yes, I did.
Worse, the quality of cheap watercolors available for a student, especially from the elementary or primary levels, doesn't quite contribute to the good reputation of watercolors. Unlike your standard crayons, which are affordable and do their job perfectly and earning the sweet A+ in your grading and arts and crafts projects, watercolors can make you even lose confidence in whatever fiber of artistic talent that you have. I personally avoided using watercolors in a significant number of years in my life, scared of how unapproachable it can be for a young kid like me. But despite all that, I remained enchanted by the effect watercolors and a lot of wet media brings to the artworks created from them. And being an arts teacher who delved into the world of notable artists, local and international, for the lessons that I am teaching to my students, I saw how these artists' works really deserve the praise that they have. The likes of Claude Monet, Paul Cézanne, Fernando Amorsolo, Vicente Manansala, and Vincent van Gogh.
The correct Dutch pronunciation is Vincent van Gogh.
Forget that. I'm sticking with Vincent van Gogh. They all have created these fascinating eye candies of creative expression that for an art lover would make you shake in a seizure of pure bliss. And in a world made smaller by the internet, you could easily find people sharing their love for art, especially for watercolor, in YouTube or Instagram, such as James Gurney, The Mind of Watercolor, Mateusz Urbanowicz, Mamang Juanit. Shameless plugging. Please support me on Facebook and Instagram. And for a person that is a fan of Chinese animation from Japan, the likes of Makoto Shinkai and Studio Ghibli are sure to trigger the artistic itch within me. There's just so much art pieces and inspiration nowadays that are available for us, whether you are a young artist, a professional one, or even if you're just a person extremely into art. And that made me rethink that maybe, just maybe, I should try my hand in doing watercolor. So what does one need to begin dabbling in the world of watercolor? Well, don't fear, because here to share with you the hidden knowledge of watercoloring is me, an absolute beginner. Yeah, we're just in the same boat. We're both the 2-year-olds making a mess of our mother's kitchen tiles. What gives me the right to teach you then? Well, not to brag, but I once repeatedly shot our television set with a water gun. If that doesn't make me a waterbender, and in turn, a watercolor master, I don't know what will. Okay, let's lay out the facts first. High-quality materials play a significant role in your final product. There's a reason why artists, as they become more financially stable, start to explore and use more expensive materials for their artworks. Of course, your skill and creativity would be your big guns that will help you bring down that idea that you have in mind for an artwork. But having the proper ammunition, which are your materials, would make that endeavor much easier and enjoyable. So if you or your family can afford to, go purchase those higher quality art materials. I know that we often lose our self-control once we step inside an art supply shop or when we browse an online product catalog for art stuff, but don't just settle with the expensive ones though. Search for product reviews to check if the expensive paper that you're about to buy is actually worth the price. But if those are out of your budget, then feel free to stick to the more affordable ones. As much as I vouch for quality over price, don't let money be a hindrance for you to start painting. Find a balance of the two, and then proceed.
お前の欲しいのは金のクーラーかいそれとも銀のクーラーかい
神様、私が欲しいのは普通のクーラーでございます。
なんという正直者じゃではお前には新品のクーラーをやろう
神様
First and foremost, the watercolor. As I mentioned earlier, cheap watercolors can actually bring you more harm than good. One may argue that they could help one bring their foot to the door of watercolor painting, but like in my case, it can actually scare you from trying watercolors. Still, if that's the one that's available to you right now, or if you're hesitant at spending big bucks on a set that's beyond your budget, then go ahead and use them. Your main focus still be to have that right feel with the new medium that you are using. And by the way, watercolors are different from acrylics and from oils. And with that, let's go to brushes. I recommend buying a set of watercolor brushes, especially early on, since it will allow you to shift from different brush strokes with ease. Varying sizes of brushes will also help you fill out large spaces of your artwork or create fine details while also maintaining your sanity. Paper. I personally recommend buying paper specifically made for watercolor painting since ordinary paper is not created to handle water that well. Unless you want your paper to have more holes than my pocket during sales. Avoid using thin materials like irregular bond paper. You can try exploring heavier or thicker varieties of paper if watercolor paper is not available to you in your local area. You can buy watercolor paper and then cut it into smaller pieces if the size is too big for you to draw in, or if you just want to save your budget. Now those are the big three of watercolor painting. Here are some additional materials or equipment that you should have when you're working. 2 jars for holding your water, preferably glass, masking tape to hold your paper into place and to create a sweet even border on the side, a piece of cloth to wipe your brush as you paint. Personally, I just use an old shirt that I no longer wear, a palette to mix your colors in. I prefer using the white plastic plate that I have at home since it has more space to work around. And lastly, your pencil and eraser.
One of the most common mistakes that I see students make when they are using wet medium is that they paint their objects by creating a black outline and they fill it up with color. Do not do this. Yes, this can be a deliberate stylistic choice, but in painting, we usually show the boundaries between objects by their difference in color. How about if they need to have the same color? We employ a variety of shades and tints so the outline of an object will appear without the need to wrap it with lines just to show that it's there. Start with the backgrounds first. Painting is all about stacking layers upon layers of paint over one another, which reduces the effort needed to cover up the empty white specks on your artwork that you overlook. Think of your idea as a stack of Pringles, but instead of starting from the top, invert that can and start munching from the bottom layers first. Clean your brushes often. We've discussed how painting materials can cost a ton, so you don't want to waste your precious paints just because they became contaminated by a stray drop of a different unwanted color that remained in your brush. This is especially true when handling easily contaminated colors such as white and yellow. Speaking of white, conserve your white paint. Probably the color that you will use most often, white is like that holy grail of paint colors, the spice melange, the greatest resource a watercolor enthusiast would yearn for. You can use it to add highlights, create tints, form beautiful color gradations, and many more. One of my biggest disappointments is not being able to find individually sold white paint packages in online shops, since the whites in my color sets dry up faster than a land during the El Nino season. If you're having trouble thinking what to paint, or just want to experiment with your technique, don't be afraid to look for tutorials on the internet. You may also study actual artworks or art books, imagining and trying to replicate the effect that you see.
レッスン1、不良というのはまず見た目が勝負です。初心者はまず髪を金髪に脱色してみましょう。薬剤が強すぎると髪が白くなってしまうので注意しましょう。
しまった。
I purchased a while back an art book discussing about Makoto Shinkai's backgrounds in his films, such as 5 centimeters per second, and I love it. Much like any other skill like riding a bike, swimming, or even learning how to draw, repetition is the key. Analyze, apply, and then rinse and repeat. The more you repeat something, the more it becomes ingrained within you. Which is pretty much what Kyoto Animation did when they gave me PTSD every time I listened to a girl reminding his brother of a ringing phone. Fail successfully. Yes, that's right. I'm encouraging you to fail in your artworks, but in a proper way. How is that? Every time you make a mistake, find out what made it wrong, and then learn from that mistake and don't do the same thing next time. Don't just amass failures, rather, stock up on successful failures. Lastly, have fun. You're about to try something new, and I know how nerve-wracking it can be. Most of us have this feeling that we need to strike a perfect score on our first attempts. This is not always the case. Most of the time, especially when you are trying something for the first time, you would fail at it miserably. Horribly. But learn to laugh it off. Your goal right now is to learn this new world that you've been placed into. Find out how it works, discover ways to work around and fix your mistakes, and most of all, enjoy the whole process of doing so. Being bad in the beginning doesn't mean that you will stay bad until the very end. Watercolor painting is amazing. Being able to capture the real world and the one in your imagination with brushstrokes is an exhilarating experience. I myself am looking forward on how my adventures with my brush will go in the future, and I hope that's so with you. It's such a shame if people would avoid jumping in this new medium just because of how intimidating this may seem to an outsider's eyes. Try it, and then perhaps you might find something that you would truly love.